be also reading, reciting out loud, a lot of entertainment resources, entertainment news, for example. So the continuation of some of my readings and writings and reading that aloud and saying that aloud, a lot of generic terms and phrases, a lot of jokes and bluffing and teasing, joking, a lot of different calisthenics and exercises and theatrics, and a lot of laughter and geek and comedy jokes, for example. The man in the video person said, paraphrase, summarized, vivid, except for certain national security, certain country securities, under almost no circumstances would that be allowed. And for example, unless real national securities or country securities, ours. And all of a sudden, the mind becomes clear that there's no compromise, no negotiation, no settlements, no negotiations, no settlements, no negotiations, except very likely for our own national, for example, or country securities. And there's about no other exceptions, unwritten, generally speaking, unwritten. And all of a sudden life becomes very simple, doesn't it? It's not slow, the so-called frog or toad, simmering in water, a lot of metaphors and parables. There's none of it. And it's extremely unassimilated mind, and not assimilated at about all. And life becomes very excellent, fine and good. There's no, tomorrow, procrastination. No, it's very excellent, fine and good about 100% of the time. Different so-called placeholders or place setters, totally unassimilated, extremely not assimilated about all, about 100% real critical mass. And for all intents and purposes, the sole provider and the sole creator, the so-called creator, for all intents and purposes, real critical mass, about 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%. The sole providers, I guess so. I guess plural tense. Would you like to describe that more? Sole providers, yes. And real critical mass, about 2. 2 out of 2, 3 out of 3, no. Someone might say yes, and they might be correct. Subjective and objective, different ways of viewing things, that's correct. But for all intents and purposes, very likely only about 2, TWO, for real critical mass. So providers, so creators, so providers, creators, and producers, heavy laden producers, providers, creators. And very important resource, money is currency. Is reading this aloud, the man, individual person said, very much customized and personalized medicine, supplies, energies, resources, monies, energies, supplies, resources, advertisements, brochures, advertisements, money, supplies, materials, resources. And the man, individual person said, you might want to watch out for so-called titrate, where we're maybe about 10, 20, 30 years, for example, for instance, so-called, a lot of members and citizens run out of certain resources, monies, energies, supplies, materials, medicine, supplies, resources, oftentimes very much customized and personalized, slowly, maybe running out of resources, monies, currency, energies, and resources, real critical mass are living and dying, live or die. In this book, the movie script, we're reading this aloud and saying this aloud, and they might say, you might want to watch out for the so-called Ice Age or Cold Ages. In this book, the movie script that might last for about 5 or 10,000 years. About 5 or 10,000 years, not quite about 11 or 12,000 years, not quite about 11 or 12,000 years projected in this book, the movie script, that would begin in about 50 or 60 years. They're real scary, frightening. Real economics cooling down and calming down pre-Ice Age and during the Ice Age. Ice ages and cold ages and snow ages in this book that are movie script, a book that writes jokes out of entertainment resources, entertainment news, for example, and paraphrase quotations, summarized, abbreviated, and very heavy laden resource circulations, energy circulations, and money circulations, and resource circulations, energy circulations, sort of speaking for myself, and this book that are movie script, and they'd probably feel sorry for you. They probably feel bad and sorry for you, prolonged duration. And they're also in many cases, your lawyers and attorneys and psychiatrists. Until about 30 or 40 years ago, your defense psychiatrists, your defense lawyers and defense attorneys in many cases, and we won about 100% of our cases. cases. Won about 100% of our cases as defense lawyers, civil and criminal, arbitration, mediation, and they're also rescuers of many of our members' citizens. About 60 or 61% of those held hostage, captive in this book that are moving scripts. We then saw verified summarize about 60 or 61% rescued out of a possibility of 100%, out of a possibility of about 100%, about 60 or 61%, about half, a little more than half. And as for criminal cases, much more better than that, much more better, yes, about 100%, victory, mission accomplished, goals accomplished, mission accomplished, goals accomplished, and for example, so-called, a lot of entertainment resources, entertainment news. The man in the video person said, paraphrase, quotation, summarized, abbreviated. The man in the video person said, paraphrase, quotation, summarized, abbreviated. Very excellent, finding good about 100% of the time. Very excellent, finding good about 100% of the time. Very appropriate and safe and sound about 100% of the time. Very appropriate and safe and sound about 100% of the time. And we're real family members. FMs are family members. FMs are family and friends. For example,